You know that feeling when fall hits and your paperwork systems collapse like a Halloween decoration? Yeah, let's not do that again. In this video, I'm going to show you how to get your client-facing forms in shape before the client rush hits you like a freight train. All right, do me a favor, pull out the chat so you can see it. And I always like to just pop it right out so I can put it where I want it. And if you would, if you go ahead and click that attendance link, we're going to take attendance and it's going to ask you on the Google form to fill in, actually, not on the Google form, sorry. On the Google form is a number. And that's the number that would go on your certificate. Your certificate's already in your profile. So if you go to katewalkertraining.com and at the same spot you got this Zoom link, you're going to see your certificate and an evaluation link. So you would need to fill that out. Yes, it's the honor system. And that audit number is for us. So if you forget it, if you somehow miss it, don't worry. Just you got the certificate. It says you attended. Also, I really love it when people turn their cameras on. I know people don't want to, but if you are eating or drinking, I don't care. We're all just trying to do our best, getting our paperwork in shape before our big rules review. Now, if you didn't see, we do have a rules review scheduled for September 18th. That is free, and that will be with and Dr. Ashley Stevens. So we will cover LPC, LMFT, and social work. So I really love it that we've been able to include more and more social work, really covering all of the mental health licenses in Texas. Psychologists, I'm sorry, I just don't know a whole lot about you. So it's y'all get complicated. And so what I hope to include tonight, let me go ahead and share, is not only just what you can put into your paperwork uh, to meet the board rules, but some optional things as well. There are a couple of changes that have happened that are happening and that might affect how you do your paperwork. And I know that's why you guys are here. It just seems like, this year it's been change after change after change. And, it's because of the 4-year rules review. When that happened, it's almost like I think of it like ironing a sheet, which I have never done in my life, but I'm imagining, right? You're ironing, and there's another wrinkle and you got to iron over there. Well, that's what these huge legal documents are like. So a lot of the changes that come across, and people like me, or you get the email from BHEC, it's asking you to look at this stuff, and you're like, I don't see what's changed. Nothing's changed. Well, they probably got rid of something, or they added a comma here or a period there or an extra word. So they're really cleaning things up. But I'm going to ask you to pay attention to the rules that are up for the 30-day rules review. These are not procedural ticky-tack administrative. These are real deal rules. And if you're a supervisor, they affect you. I'm going to talk more about that September 18th. But if you're in the Facebook group, Texas Supervisor Coalition, I'm going to post my comments. So if you want those, grab them. They like it to be your own words, but I know it's hard to get started sometimes. And these are just my opinions, right? Texas Supervisor Coalition, I do not represent you. We're not that kind of group. We're just a nice group of people that support one another. So if you're not a supervisor, you might want to check it out as well, because there are just some things in there that just might ought to pay attention to. So, but I'm not going to cover that tonight. I'm covering paperwork. So before we get started, um, because there aren't a whole lot of changes, would you guys do me a favor and just type into the chat if there's anything in particular you want to make sure that I cover? So take about 10, 15 seconds and type away or key in or enter the data. Maybe something you've heard about, or those of you who work with other licenses. Maybe you've heard that they have to do something and you're wondering if you have to do that, or you're just not sure. And if you're a first timer to a webinar, I would love to hear from you. If just give me a thumbs up if this is your first time to come to a Kate Walker training webinar. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. I hope it's good information. New upload system. Okay, Paula, I will want to hear. Oh, that reminds me. If I ask you to unmute, just know that you will be on the recording. I don't show faces. I'm able to edit that in Zoom, but your voice will be on the recording. So it's totally okay if you're like, no, Kate, I just want to stay in the chat. We can do it there. New upload system. Talk about including what to do in the event of death or incapacitation. Yep. Anything about charging for filling out FLMA paperwork or filling out documents or guidelines for subpoenas? Great question. Welcome, William. I'm glad you're here. All right. Great questions. Okay, so you're going to be surprised at what the rules don't say. So, thumbs up if you can see my PowerPoint. Everybody see my PowerPoint? We're good? All right. So, we're going to talk about core clinical paperwork. And you notice some of these things are in orange. So the best way to teach this is to show you the template that is based on what I used in my Achieve Balance practice. It's going to show you the pieces and parts. One of the things I noticed in a thread, I think it was in the Texas Counselors Creating Badass Businesses group, somebody was asking about like 4 or 5 different forms that the clients were filling out through their EHR system. And my question was, why so many forms? Why don't you just put it all together? And their answer was, well, that's kind of the way that it's set up. I wasn't really sure. So remember, Texas, I mean, they require a consent for treatment. That is a part of um, it's written into the rules. And so what I'm going through here, if you see that it's in orange, those are things that are not necessarily required by LPC rules, and or my wording may not be the greatest, and or you want to add something or modify it. So for example, a good faith estimate is a federal law. It's not in the Texas rules. And so you won't see it anywhere in the Texas LPC, LMFT, or social work. So um, that's part of this. And Christina, great question about using AI for the informed consent. I used it for this presentation and it did pretty darn good. I mean, it doesn't know Texas rules up to the minute. Remember, AI is always going to have a lag time as far as research goes. It's getting better, but at this point, it's a good place to start, and we'll talk about that when it comes to creating an ROI. And then we have administrative paperwork, which is how you document, how you retain records, your social media and communication policy, your emergency contact and safety plan. This is additional information you might want to include. Sliding fee schedule, which I always refer to the federal poverty standards. Supervision documentation, if you're not a supervisee or a supervisor, you would not need that. Client satisfaction and feedback, and revocation of consent, right? We talk about consent, but when is it over? When is it suspended? And oh, awesome, Sophia. Yes, you are presenting in the Texas Supervisor Coalition to supervisors. So getting more specific with AI and creating and paperwork. Simple practice using AI notes requiring consent. Yep, we'll talk about that for sure. So I was going to start here with the example, but I think it's probably a better idea to go here, and I'm going to have to stop and reshare because that's just how Zoom is. So at the BHEC website, we just had new rules drop. So the LPC, I will use that as an example. And let's pull this over here. There we go. Okay. Thumbs up if you can see the PDF, Texas Behavioral Health. Yep. Okay. So you'll see if we've got the latest version right here. It just dropped a few days ago. Love the rules because you can see all the changes here and everything is a hot link. So if we go to informed consent, and we click on it, it goes right to what we're looking for. So regardless of setting, a licensee must provide counseling only in the context of a professional relationship. Here's what needs to be in it: fees and arrangements for payment, counseling purposes, goals, and techniques. So what is counseling? Any restrictions placed on you, the limits on confidentiality, any intent of the licensee to use anybody else to provide treatment, and supervision of the licensee, the name and address and phone number of the BHEC, and your plan for the custody and control of the client's mental health. The client, and this is also kind of new, you might not know this. So the licensee must inform the client in writing of any changes. So those of you who like to raise your fees on people who are existing clients, you must let them know in writing. And this is information about consenting with a minor and getting those documents. You have to have those documents. And licensing within the scope of employment with an agency or institution. This is brand new, so some of you might not know this at all. Uh, Employed with an agency or institution that is not required to obtain a signed informed consent, but must document in writing that the licensee informed the client of the information required by subsection A of this section and that the client consented. So, if you or your supervisor are working in a hospital or a prison or an inpatient facility and they have already filled out a ton of paperwork, and you're coming to them for the first time saying, okay, I'm going to give you my informed consent. It's like, no, that's not the policy of where you work. So you still take this client through your consent. And then when they say, yes, I understand, yes, I agree, you document that they agreed. Okay, so I want to show you where this all is. This is not brand new to July. This is brand new to, I believe, November 2024. And then keeping records. Uh, we're not going to talk about that as much. Really, this is just about getting your paperwork as far as the intake document in place. But I did want you to know where to go to find out about progress notes and things like that. So right now we can answer, a question about the FMLA paperwork. Board doesn't care if you charge, right? I mean, you can charge whatever you want for whatever you want. Um, but it does, for example, talk about having a plan in the event of death or incapacitation, but it doesn't say what you have to have in it. There's a lot of anecdotal stuff that floats around about, does the person have to be licensed? Do you have to have a professional will, a business will, all of these very, very complicated things. The rules don't speak to that. Um, and then AI and informed consent. The rules don't talk about AI yet. So treating it like, okay, well, what is AI kind of like? Well, it's kind of like when we record a session, right? Anytime we record, we get the client's permission. And then same thing here. Yeah. So hopefully we will catch all of these questions, but just know if you see something or if I point something out to you in orange, that it's open for interpretation and in addition that you might have. Also, I'm just pulling up LPC as a reference. LMFT and social work, you all have similar verbiage. And even the part about, giving assent to treatment when you haven't given consent in writing. So, but again, come to the paperwork. I'm sorry, not the paperwork, the rules review, September 18th, and we will get down into the nitty gritty of that. All right, so nothing added to the chat, but I'm going to keep that open. I think, Jennifer, if you're still on, would you post the attendance link one more time? If you log on and off, you're going to you may miss the link. So again, grab the link right now, click it so that the window's open. You don't have to fill anything out right now, but there we go. All right, so everybody, thumbs up if you can see my screen and you see a client services agreement slash consent to treat. Do we see that? All right, good deal. So, where's my, that's not what I want. So, first thing we're going to talk through is that why, that what is counseling, meetings, telehealth consent, fees, good faith estimate changes, and cancellations. So the first part here, welcome to blank LLC. And yes, you guys are going to get this. When you sign this document, it will also represent an agreement between us. You may revoke this agreement at any time. So there's my language to revoke consent. The revocation will be binding upon me. That's what the blank is, me, the practice owner. Unless we have taken action in reliance on this agreement or you have not satisfied any financial obligations you have incurred. I have no idea if that's an okay thing to do. What you're going to find, your informed consent is also a place where you can talk about your policies. I remember I taught a class, a supervision class, and someone said, you know, in my informed consent, I let this person know that if they threatened some other person, I can't remember what it was, but it was not Tarasoff, right? It was because Texas doesn't have Tarasoff. But in her informed consent, she said, I absolutely 100% will do that. And she worked with a particular population where that was an issue. So it's not like in the informed consent, you can, you know, say, you know, I'm going to break all the rules and you're going to be okay with it, sign here. But you can put things that you believe in if, you know, if it goes against the rules, you won't win. And we'll talk about that when we talk about court appearances, you know, because we all like to charge $1 million. If you send me to court, I'm going to charge you a ton of money. Well, you know, if your subpoena's only got $11 paperclip to it, like mine do, I mean, that may be all you get. So, but I digress. So here we go. So if this is my wording, if you have not satisfied any financial obligations, then I'm going to say we are still in a counseling arrangement, or I may say we are no longer in a counseling arrangement. I'm going to go after you for that money. All right, but again, consult your attorney. Counseling services. Now, this talks about what to expect. Your first appointment will involve an assessment. It may take several sessions. Uh, I may or may not be able to provide you with these services. If I can't, I will send you on to someone else. I'll refer. So again, this is not a have to. You don't have to have this in your informed consent. And then talking about it's a large commitment of time, money, and energy, how it's different than going to a medical doctor, benefits and risks. And again, you can throw this into ChatGPT. If you want to have a really nice why, helping clients understand the benefits and not so beneficial things that counseling can do. This is just mine that I've used for years. Jocelyn's asking if the template, yeah, actually, I think it says 2025. So all the paperwork in the Step It Up membership, if it's been updated, it's going to have 2025 on it. If a lawyer asks you for all documents and a notarized affidavit and we want to charge for our time, how could we cover that in our consent? Well, again, I'm going to go back to your FMLA paperwork. I mean, I charge for my time. If you want me to mow your lawn or you want me to consult on your, you know, legal case. So you can charge whatever you want. So asking for, you know, if a lawyer comes to you and says, I want you to spend 10 days in Stephenville while we wait to see if your court case comes up, you know, that's something, if you have a subpoena, you may have no choice. if this is something that your client wants you to do, you could get a retainer just like an attorney would. So again, it doesn't speak to this in the rules. All it says in the rules is that you explain how you will charge and what you will charge, and we'll show that in a minute. Is this template only available for Step It Up members? Nah, I'm going to go ahead and give it to all y'all. I'll put it in your profile for this. So for this webinar, go to your Kate Walker training profile, and I will add that and the PowerPoint. And actually, I think there's an old one in the Facebook group. All right, meetings. The initial assessment, and I put this is in my comfort zone. I tell people this in my 10-minute consultation as well. If you don't know what the 10-minute consultation is, you can get that. We did a big promotion on that the last couple of months. But I always say, look, this is how I work. I need one session for this, two sessions for that, and three sessions you're going to know if working with me is going to be a good fit. So you can put that here for the assessment. But again, this is up to you. Now we get to fees. Now fees are where misunderstandings can happen. When misunderstandings happen, that's when people get angry, and angry people tend to file complaints. So starting with money and time, right? We want to make sure that our potential customers, which are these people who are about to sign this document, understand exactly what's happening. So I talk about that I'm cash pay. So fees are collected when services are rendered. You may take insurance. So you may want to have a statement there about billing. In addition to therapy service, fees may include, so Jocelyn, that gets to your question, assessment administration, scoring, reporting, creating reports, creating copies of records, and consulting with other professionals at the client's request. So in a case like that, if I'm asked to do anything outside of the therapy room, I'm like an attorney. I'm going to start a clock and charge on the quarter hour. And that is my hourly rate. So I don't put anything in here. And you can tell how old this is. Nobody writes checks anymore. So yeah, $25 for a return check.
I have a
Just,
question.
yes.
If we note that, like, we're gonna charge, an hour over time for whatever document,
Mhm.
but the lawyer requests that, are we sending the invoice to the lawyer or to the client?
It's up to you. Who's got the money? You know what I mean? I've done cases where I had the credit card. I've had cases where the lawyer had the credit card. Um, so your client is your client. If they're going through their attorney, then it gets into this legal stuff that I don't understand. So, but I would start with your client, right? Especially if it's not a subpoena, right? If you're being asked to spend all this time, say, you know what? As soon as I get this paid, I'll be happy to. Or as soon as you give me a credit card and I can bill you, we can just set up a $1,000 retainer, and whatever I don't use, I'll give it back to you. Right. We had to talk about this today, some colleagues of mine, the ethics of sort of holding money. And we were talking about bundles, in terms of like bundles of sessions, how folks will do sometimes. And the ethics behind that is, okay, what do you do if it's not used? Right? So you have something for your mortgage called an escrow. An escrow means it's an account for all those expenses at the end of the year that you don't know how much they're going to be yet, right? It's a little savings account. So it's the same thing with money like this. If you're going to hold money back or take money for time that you may spend, just make sure if you don't use it all, you invoice, you document real carefully what you did spend, and then give it back. Jackie, is it true there's a rule that there should be no fee for disability medical records release? There's no rule that I know of. I've never heard of that. But thanks for bringing it up. I always like to hear what's kind of out there floating around. So this is where I put my good faith estimate, but I also put it with my electronic health records because good faith is technically a different document. It's a federal document. But I put it here as well just because it kind of fits nicely. So I've just talked about fees, and this again, go to ChatGPT. There's no rule that says what it has to say. It just says there has to be one. So under the No Surprises Act, here's what this looks like. The current fee per session is blank. So if you attend 3 sessions, it's going to be 3 times blank. And, that's a little bit different for those of you who are maybe insurance and you said, well, we just got approved for 10 sessions. So your group, your good faith estimate is, whatever your copay is times 10. So that's up to you. You're entitled of this good faith estimate. That's why it's a good idea to have another document. And if you are billed $400 differently, then you can dispute those. But again, that's not an LPC or a BHEC thing. That is a federal government thing. All right, changes and cancellations. Again, this fits so nicely under professional fees, where you can talk about your no-show policy. I allow 24-hour notice, 48's great. Rules don't speak to it. Rules don't talk about how long you have to wait, how much you can charge. The only thing that you need to pay attention to, and this is sort of going off topic, so I won't go long, but going after those fees with an outside company, like a collection service or something like that, because now you're dealing with protected health information and it gets dicey. So um, it's good to just contact your malpractice insurance if someone's not paying their bill. Any questions about that? Again, in orange, I start talking about things that it was just kind of a Kate Walker training. I'm sorry, an achieve balance thing. Because if somebody just kept no showing, but they really wanted to come back to therapy, I'm like, okay, fine, give me $500 and I will, every time you come, then you're paid. And if you never come back, I'll send you a check for what you didn't use. Contacting you. Now, you guys, if you've heard me teach before, you know that I don't like any kind of outside of the office contact. And that's not just because I don't like people. I love people. The way I was trained, one of the ways I'm a systemic thinker, I'm a family therapist, marriage and family trained. And so this is a lot of my strategy. If I'm working with families and couples, I need them to work it out instead of having a constant contact. So that's actually my theory. So you would have to look into what is your theory? How does that work best? But state it clearly and explain where counseling happens. If you are conducting therapy sessions in writing over email and text message, those are all notes. Those go into the protected health information file of your clients, and you better be using HIPAA compliant email and texting. I don't like this is I should put this in orange. I think I will. Um, no, I won't. I'll leave it up to y'all. I don't like pagers back in the day. I did not want to be the one that a client contacted if there was an emergency. I'm the worst person you can call if there's an emergency. Call 911. So I put that in writing, but again, the rules do not speak to that. Jocelyn, yeah, if they don't pay contact malpractice insurance, if you are thinking about contracting with a third party, so like a collection service, right? Because there are some collection services, they'll buy the debt, they'll purchase the debt, and they'll go after the person for you. But again, there's all kinds of HIPAA laws being broken when you do that. So, and there are people who know more about that than I do, so that may be an exception. And this is a really nice place to put your social media policy. And no, this isn't in the rules yet. No, this is not in the stuff we have to have in the informed consent. Remember, I showed you that. But it is absolutely best practices. And when I go to hear the board members give their presentations at TCA and TAMFT and all the things, they're talking more and more about these policies. And so I believe all the boards have developed sort of an informal policy that you can download and you can use their verbiage. So this is close to that. And, this orange part, honestly, I don't know if I can do this, but it sounds scary. And I just wanted to make sure because this has happened before where we've had clients out or non-clients out clients or clients out clients on social media, right? So I try to be scary here. I have no idea if I can enforce this. It says taking all steps, including contacting legal authorities. They probably be like, so what? We can't help you, right? But at least I people will understand that I'm very serious about that. Of course, the limits of confidentiality, which you guys can literally go to the rules. That's why I love our new rule book because everything is here. If you don't know, where's my scroller? There it is. No, it's not. Anyway, if you go all the way to the end, why can't I scroll? There it is. There's chapter 611. And it's in the PDF. It's in our workbook. So there's your crash course in 611. You can literally copy and paste that into your informed consent. So we're going to be talking about ROI. And one of the things, so a lot of times when I consult, I hear about staffing, right? People who are doing staffing. Um, and that's okay. That's how an agency runs, right? There has to be communication. So it's important that you explain, okay, this is how our office works. Although you'll probably meet with only one counselor, you're receiving services from the office of your practice, LLC. Consequently, you'll have a file in our office, which all therapists and some unlicensed staff will have necessary access. We utilize blank, and this is where you can put your EHR system. I know in the past I have just posted a link. If I use the HIPAA compliant version of Google Workspaces, I just put the link there so that if anybody wanted to, they could go in, click, and go see all they want to see about Google Workspaces HIPAA compliant version. And then we consult with each other about our work. Um, scheduling, records management, quality assurance. All of the mental health professionals and staff are bound by the same rules of confidentiality and been trained to be HIPAA compliant. So again, I would still get an ROI explaining this in depth, but in the consent for treatment, that's going to help your client understand how the information is shared. Let me see. Just catching up on the, okay, cool. So, if you work at a place where everybody consults, you know, see what this might be a good, I've never seen a great answer to this. So if it's something you're concerned about, just better to be safe than sorry. Get a release of information, a ROI. I get asked sometimes, if I get a referral from this physician, can I write them a thank you note? Yeah, as long as you don't say that you got a referral from them. You know what I mean? It's like you can't confirm or deny that the client ever came to you if that client has not consented to let you do that. And we have a podcast dropping tomorrow on that because it's a huge question. I mean, if you go and you Google frequently asked questions about therapy from people who've never had therapy, they want to know how we handle their information, right? They want to know if we're going to happy hour and talking about them over cocktails. So helping them understand here, even something as simple as staffing. Okay, continuing counseling via technology. This is another area that it's not necessarily in the rules, But there is definitely a lot being said by the board at meetings. You need to do this. You need to make sure folks understand the limitations. And I grabbed this from, I don't remember, it wasn't ChatGPT, believe it or not. I grabbed this from, I believe it was an NBCC or some other, similar license that did have a pretty good technology statement. Okay, moving on, professional records. You're going to explain to your client how you store their records. And you can charge them a copy fee of $25 or whatever you want. Charge your hourly rate. And if you refuse their request to access their records, you better have a good reason, because I'm not even going to get into that, but you're going to explain all that here. And here's the termination, death, or incapacity of a counselor. So let's see. Oh, I got out of my area here. This is it. The established plan for the custody and control of the client's mental health records in the event of the licensee's death or incapacity or the termination of the licensee's counseling practice. That's it. That's all it says. It doesn't get any more complicated than that. So I've always, there was a case where in the Woodlands, Texas, one of our medical practices went out of business, and they, I mean, out of business completely. They had several offices, and anecdotally, they went, I mean, this is what I heard. They went to court and they got an exception to the then 5 years rule, right? Hanging on to records for 5 years. It's 7 years now because there was no money, right? So think about your records and who's got your credit card? Who's got your credit card and paying for your EHR system? You probably want them to be the ones who become your new records custodian. So there's lots of room here to help your new client understand that, how to contact them. And, if it's your spouse, have them take a HIPAA training. I mean, if you think about when you go to your physician's office, and sorry, my dog doesn't like me talking. Andy, stop. Those folks have been trained in HIPAA, and they will be the ones who become the new records custodian. So that's all it says. All right, Carolina, I see your hand up.
Yes, Kate, I was going to ask you two questions, and that had already been pondering on, and I think hopefully I'm not interrupting. But
No, go.
one, as far as our fees, I always understood, and you kind of mentioned too, this that we can set our fees for different things, correct? And recently, I randomly saw a comment from an LPCS on social media where it said, someone charging like a sliding scale fee, that they needed to be careful with that and could even face legal ramifications, I guess, if they charged like too little. So I was like, okay, that really confused me a lot, right? And then question number two, right now that you were mentioning several people working in the practice and kind of having access or, well, potential access, right? So if I have two clinicians and obviously one cannot work with maybe, I don't know, their family member, but another one can, but they're in the same practice, is that okay? Even though maybe I don't think they would have access to each other's records, but those are my two questions. Sorry.
No, that's good. Those are great questions. So the first one about the fees, the sliding fee scale, nothing in the rules speak to how to do it, what is right, what is wrong. But what you can get in trouble for would be giving preference, right? You're discriminating and you're saying, okay, you get a sliding fee scale, but you don't. It's how you base your sliding fee scale. So what I've always learned and what I've always taught is to have a concrete thing that goes into the client's file. And I always based mine on the federal poverty standards, which, for a household of six, for a household of five, for a household of four, and then get some kind of documentation. When we'd take a pay stub or we'd take, an unemployment letter, just whatever, we weren't, going to be very strict about it. But my point is that's how you can get in trouble with the sliding scale is discrimination. There's no rule that I'm aware of that says you can charge too little or too much or anything like that. So, and if anybody else wants to pop into the chat or tell me that you've heard something different, I would love to hear it. But there's nothing I'm aware of in the rules that speak to that at all. Then the second question you're asking about is keeping records separate, or is it letting those folks collaborate?
Separate. Uh, yeah, yeah, completely separate. To where the one should not have access to the other. But if I can't think of how, but if somehow the EHR allows for that, or even just to see the name, I don't know if there would be any kind of like violation.
It sounds like something you'd want to put in your informed consent. I mean, if you think back in the day before electronic health records, I mean, I just had a four-drawer file cabinet, right? And everybody's name was at the top of the manila folder. So yeah, I mean, you could be looking for your Smith and you find somebody else's Smith, right? So it. So I mean, definitely I would put that in that person's informed consent. Just, you recognize with your family member being here that everybody has access to the records. All right, pause for just 1 second. Andy, you're gonna have to get out of here, buddy. Come on. Yep, good boy. Okay. Any other questions about that? All right, let's keep going. Client's right regarding privacy and HIPAA. And this is, you want to have something, especially if you're taking insurance, or even those of you who are out of network, if you're checking benefits, you're going to need something in your informed consent that says, hey, I'm going to call this insurance company and see if you have benefits, right? That's sharing PHI. So that should be in your informed consent that you're going to be talking to insurance companies and they may ask for things and you may have to give them things in order to be paid. Minors and parents. I put this in orange, clients under 18 and 18 years of age, and their parents should be aware that the law may or may not allow parents to examine their child's treatment records. I don't treat kids, and so I know there are exceptions where possibly parents would not have access. So that's why it's in orange. Definitely do your due diligence. And then the BHEC information, right? If you have the old licensing board information, you want to make sure you don't have that anymore because the phone number doesn't even work, I don't think. So make sure you have the new BHEC info. All right, so moving on. Somebody asked about consent for AI. Yes, you will put that in your consent. And if they say no, then you don't use AI. Okay. I mean, I don't know how practices are doing that. It's so funny. I've been doing so much research this year on AI. I don't know how, practices that are going completely AI. I don't know what they're doing when clients are like, "No, I don't want Alexa taking notes for me." Ooh, hope it doesn't turn on. Okay. Oops, go back. All right, an ROI example. Let me pull that up. Okay. So this again, just chat GPT. I said, what should be in a release of information? Because, with HIPAA's a federal law, right? It's not just a Texas thing. So, one of the things I talked about in the podcast episode tomorrow is, we want our lawyers to build these forms, but our lawyers aren't generally mental health or medical health professionals, right? So if you build the form and then you take it to the lawyer, you're going to save a lot of money. So even if you don't end up going with this one, this is a really good start. So it starts with the client information. You want the authorized recipient. So this is specific to another health professional. It could be specific to a partner or person, someone outside, you're trying to get information about a young adult from, their parent or something like that. Uh, the specific information to be released. This can get very, very detailed, it should. And then when it expires, if the client doesn't write or give you information about when it expires, then it's generally 1 year after the date. And their acknowledgement, signatures, and it's just the acknowledgement that this is just a template. Any questions about an ROI, a release of information? Okay. So other things, I know we would include something like an FAQ, how to get the most out of therapy. That was always fun to do. The other thing to include, you can go to uh, the HHS website and you can get brochures. And these can be in a separate document. You can get them in different languages. And so handing out a separate document that acknowledges HIPAA, remember HIPAA's federal, consent is basically state, it's your licensing, right? So having a separate document, and you guys all know that when you go to the doctor's office, you have to sign something that says, I have received a copy of HIPAA compliance and I acknowledge that I understand it and have all my questions answered. Jocelyn, that's a really good question because you are sharing information. Um, and maybe that's something that is just a little loophole that insurance contracts allow. Um, yeah, I don't know. Everybody does it, so I don't know how you could avoid it, right? You've got to check benefits. Okay, so back to the brochure. And again, all I Googled was, HIPAA policies brochure. Um, your contract, I think I was going to include some things here for supervision and I changed my mind. So I'm just going to delete that. Oh. All right. So new July rules affecting LPC, LMFT and social work. I didn't see any rules that were new or different that would affect your intake paperwork. So additional language in 681.36. Provides a clearer example of what counts as a progress note, including formatting expectations. This is new. I haven't even dug into this. When I saw this, I was like, oh, really? They're telling us how to do notes. Emphasizes electronic records must meet HIPAA and council security standards. So that's 681.36. So we knew that. So maybe I'm mistaken. Because this is for the daily, every time your client comes, which this hasn't changed in years. I mean, this is what goes in a client's file. This is what your EHR is taking, asking you for every time. And we all know that it's a long time that you have to keep records. Yeah, none of that has changed. So I'm not sure I'm going to put this in orange. I'll find out more information before our rules review. Six 81.41 and 681.42. Yeah, I'm not sure. I Let me dig some more into that. So what's probably happening here is if the board is making comments and about the ethics, it's sort of like technology best practices and social media best practices. It has not made it into the rule yet. But any questions about anything, or have you guys heard anything different? Has anything in your world, does anything contradict what I'm telling you here? I find that this webinar is usually sort of stopping rumors and things that we think we have to have more than telling you anything new that you didn't already know. Like the charging for FMLA paperwork or whatever, right? I mean, yeah, you can charge for all of that if you want to. If it takes you an hour to fill it out, it can be intense paperwork. What else? Any questions? Anybody add anything to their consent or to their set of paperwork? I know one of the things I saw was a practices policies. But again, I feel like if you include it all in that clinical consent for treatment, it just alleviates a lot of confusion, a lot of paperwork. What about immigration evaluation consent? I'm not sure. What are you asking me, Jocelyn?
Like, is there anything in the rules about that? Like when we do the training, like they give us like this template on like what to explain and like kind of like a little consent, but I don't know if there's anything in the rules about specifically providing immigration evaluation since it's not really therapy.
No, I mean, any kind of an assessment. I mean, if it speaks to assessment, um, you'll find a rule, right? And that's what an evaluation is. It's an assessment. And so you will need to get consent. It is in the definitions. The practice of professional counseling, conducting assessments and evaluations to establish treatment goals and objectives. So, the disability assessments that we do, the many mental status exams that we do, all of those things are assessments, and the client must fill out an informed consent. Or in lieu of that, what I mentioned earlier, if you're working someplace where they don't want you to do that, then you have to at least let them know all of these things and then document that they agreed.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yep. All right. If you guys are interested, I am doing a HIPAA intensive in August. It's a checkup, HIPAA checkup, a self audit that won't make you panic, where we'll dive into physical security, digital security, what to do if there's a breach, what are the next steps. We'll go through a checklist. And again, just if you're a practice owner, especially if you have other people that work with you or for you, it's really important that you maintain a self audit and you document that you audited yourself every year. You're not going to be perfect. No practice is going to be perfect. And that was one of the questions somebody asked in one of the threads. How do I make sure that my employees don't break the rules? Well, I don't know. You can't, right? Beyond training them and having very strict consequences, because everybody is bound to HIPAA, which is federal, and then House Bill 300, which is the Texas mirroring of that federal rule. Christina says, I have a separate financial policy that I use to easily update the fee for services. So the informed consent says fees are X unless noted in an updated financial policy. Yeah, I mean, you've informed and you've let them know how you're going to update them, right? I mean, really, that's what this is about, is transparency. I mean, the requirement is to let them know in writing the fees and if those fees changed, and that's what you're doing. Now, if they go back and they say, well, I never got an updated thing, and this is what my original thing says, I mean, you can't stop all of the problems, right? But it sounds like you're covering your bases. Do we need to include anything in paperwork about including assessments or diagnoses that we will communicate this to the insurance company? Um, you know what, Carla? It's not, I mean, you have to have that in the client file. We know that. Um, but at the very beginning of our example, when I said what counseling is and kind of the good, bad, and the ugly, I would put it there. Is if you're dealing with insurance and in your contract you could be asked for notes, diagnoses, I mean, who knows? I was an out-of-network provider and I had an insurance company call me for notes. I'm like, you're crazy. I'm not giving you notes. So that would be a great place to put that, especially if you want your clients to make an informed decision about whether they want to even use their insurance. Remember, they don't have to use their insurance. You can't advertise that you'll go off insurance, but your client is free to do whatever they want. I mean, if you've ever treated a pilot, you guys know that, right? They're not going to use their insurance. Do you have a referral for an attorney to review these in detail for us? Just the usual, the ones that are in our group. So in Texas Supervisor Coalition in the Badass group, we have Laurel Clement. The other one is Kenda Dalrymple, which is Dalrymple, Ellis, and Shell, I believe. They're out of Austin. So those are the attorneys that I've worked with, and I know they could go over these things for you. But again, they're going to look at them and say, okay, your Texas rules has this paragraph. That says what needs to be in this treatment plan, right? And I know counselors, we hate loopholes, and I know we want like absolutes. And there's just remember, where there is no rule, you go to best practices. And you guys documenting that you've been to a CE on paperwork, and you're going to document that you're going to go to the rules review, and you're going to document that you have been up to date on all of this stuff. That's good too. So yes, get it reviewed by an attorney if you can do that. But also, make sure that you're just staying up to date. Y'all are smart people. You know what you're doing. And if someone is going to try to loophole you in your treatment plan, if you've ever had teenagers, that's just a thing. Uh, Christina, I don't know. You'll have to click on the Google link to see what the number is. Thank you, Dr. Powell. Carl wants to know, how long do you give a supervisee to find a site? I give them, I don't know, a month. Nothing in the rules though. Maybe 2 months if I'm feeling nice. Or they get fired, or they job falls through, something like that. Good question. You're welcome. All right, guys, it is that time. Go get some dinner and wine. Not necessarily in that order. Thank you so much for coming. You did an amazing thing right smack dab in the middle of the week. Your certificate is in your Kate Walker training profile. I will add these resources probably tomorrow. They are not in there yet. Don't panic. I will put them in there. Also, if you're a Step It Up member, you will get the replay and the transcript so you can go through everything in detail. You guys are awesome. Have a wonderful evening. Bye. If this gave you the nudge you needed to get your paperwork in shape, hit like, tap subscribe, and grab your essential guide to private practice at katewalkertraining.com/bonus. Fall's coming. Don't let your systems fall apart with it.